The traditional belief surrounding the martyrdom of Peter is that he was crucified upside down during the Neronian persecution. So what do the sources say? Peter was a major part of the New Testament. He was present at the Transfiguration, was part of the inner circle of Christ. He was the spokesman for the 12 apostles, and he was the primary character in Acts 1 through chapter 15. Peter denied Jesus 3 times, but became an embodied leader of the Christian faith. But was he a martyr? There's a really strong case for Peter's martyrdom. I'm going to fly through it here, give you a few sources, but if you want to look at this more in depth, I put a link to Sean McDowell's PhD thesis paper that has a really complex case for it, going through all the sources, and also my friend John's ebook that also covers the same thing. So those are 2 great resources if you want to go further in depth in this topic. Here's the first piece of evidence for Peter's martyrdom, and it actually comes from the Bible. And before you say I'm just using the Bible to prove the Bible, let's just look at the case. Look at what the Bible says. So take John 21:18. In this verse, Jesus is talking to Peter, and here's what he says. He says, "Very truly I tell you, when you were younger you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go." I think that Christians and non-Christians can both agree that this is a reference to the martyrdom of Peter. The book of John was written around 90 AD, which is much later than Peter's martyrdom, which most likely occurred during the Neronian persecution in the 64 to 68 AD range. So, from the Christian side, Jesus could have easily prophesied Peter's death, and John could have included this prophecy with the knowledge that it came true of Jesus predicting the martyrdom of Peter. This passage also seems to be suggesting that Peter wouldn't only just be a martyr, but how he would die, his death by crucifixion. As the book of John says, it says that Peter will stretch out his hands. That sounds an awful lot like a crucifixion. From the skeptic side, they would say that the author John is putting words into Jesus' mouth to make it seem like Jesus prophesied Peter's martyrdom. But even if that was the case, the author would still have to know that Peter was a martyr. So I think it's very clear that Peter was a martyr. Let's look at some other passages that attest to the martyrdom of Peter. Take 1 Clement 5:4, which was written anywhere from 70 to 140 AD. It says that there was Peter, who by reason of unrighteous jealousy endured not one, but many labors, and thus have borne his testimony, went to his appointed place of glory. Now this obviously talks about the struggles that Peter went through, and that through his life he reached heaven. It really points to his martyrdom here. Here's another source, Ignatius of Antioch to the Romans in the early 2nd century. Chapter 4, verse 3. He says, "I do not enjoin you as Peter and Paul did. They were apostles. I am a convict." So I'm not going to read the whole passage here, but I mean, you can see that Ignatius is saying, hey, look, Peter is a martyr. In chapter 15 of Tertullian's Scorypas, written around the late 2nd century, early 3rd century, he says that Peter is struck and Stephen is overwhelmed by stones, that James is slain as is a victim at the altar, and Paul is beheaded, has been written in their own blood. Now you can see here that Peter is listed along with these other martyrs, which really establishes the fact that he was a martyr. Also, the reference to him being struck seems to be a reference to him being crucified, because you get nails struck into your body when you were crucified. So we've built a strong case that Peter was a martyr via crucifixion. But there is the age-old question. Was Peter crucified upside down? It's unclear historically, but it's totally possible. The first record of Peter being crucified upside down is found in the apocryphal text, the Acts of Peter, which is written around 180 to 190 AD. However, Acts of Peter contains some strange texts, such as Peter raising a tuna fish, which is probably not real. But there does seem to be a historical core to the Gospel of Peter. Christine Thomas writes, "The mere fact that externally attested first-century individuals appear as protagonists in the pages of the Acts of Peter is sufficient to show that these narratives were not fictitious and completely divorced from historical memory." So it is totally possible that Peter was crucified upside down, but the first source saying that he did comes from around 180 AD. So there you have it. There's the case for the martyrdom of Peter. It's really strong. It's really good stuff. And I can say that with almost certainty that Peter was a martyr for the Christian faith, which is really cool stuff. So if you like this video, be sure to subscribe. Leave a like. You can check out this full playlist with all the apostles' martyrdoms. You can support us financially on Patreon. The link's in the description. You can check out our social medias. And I'll see you next time. Remember, big questions need good answers.
Love is you.